Great. Thank you so much. Hello, everyone there. Thank you so much for being today with us. I am very happy and very excited for being part of the World Water Week in day one. Some people already told me how exciting it's been over there. So I'm really happy to be with you today. My name is Andrea Ramos. I am the VP of Climate Adaptation in Quilimo. Quilimo is a company that connects stakeholders willing to invest in water security with farmers willing to irrigate better in the whole continent. And what we have done very well is to find the way of generating the incentives in the farmers, and we pay them for the saving as a payment for ecosystem services. Today, we gather to discuss how collaboration and technology are reshaping agriculture's role in water security. We are convinced that talking about water security and not consider agriculture and not considering the farmers is just something that makes no sense for everyone. So I am very happy to discuss this with such an amazing panel that we have today. And as I told them before, I see this like a journey, and the way that in Quilimo we have made this panel is like a journey, because we understand that since we have the water stewardship goals until we implement the project that will help us to achieve them, there are so many things that we need to happen in the middle. And as I told you, I have a great panel today that will discuss this with me. First of all, I would like to start with the context. We can invest in water security if we don't understand the context of every basin, the risk that they are struggling with. And with that, we have the CEO of Waterplan, who is Nico. And I would like him to help us to understand how we can show the stakeholders that invest in water security the risk that they are having or that they will have if they don't invest in the watershed. And being that said, I will also like to explain, Nico, if you can, how can you do that in a scalable way, which is another challenging, right? Because working with nature, one of the challenges of that is that there is nothing to do between the situation in Chile that with Sweden. So how are you addressing that in Waterplan?
Thank you so much, Andrea, and I'm extremely happy to be here. Also happy that I could attend in person Stockholm Water Week and be sharing this panel with such amazing leaders, familiar faces, as we said. Just a brief introduction. I'm Nico. I'm one of the co-founders of Waterplan. We are a software as a service platform to help measure, report, and respond on water risk. We work with many great leaders from the sector, specifically like sustainability managers for like high intensive water companies from different industries. And that's like a common thread. Like since the beginning, I have like a funny story on the water world, like almost 12 years working, started as a medical doctor, understood the challenge of waterborne diseases and how that basically had a huge impact on the world. And then like digging deeper, I found that water, and specifically the watersheds where communities were living and where agriculture was based and where facilities of different industries were based as well, like was the actual like challenge that and the patient that I had. I remember that I'm saying like I need to take care of the people, right? I was a doctor, but actually the watershed, the hydrogeological system was the one that was not healthy many times, right? Either because it could be lack of water, too much water, the quality of the water, regulations there, infrastructure getting old. So basically at the same time that I was experiencing that, like on my early water days, regulations started to come up, right? And to basically ask companies to like find and structure and prioritize their water risk at all of their sites where they were operating. Companies were setting targets against those risks. Companies were then also driving impact, like selecting the right activities at those sites. And in that way, like the water risk assessment, like the source vulnerability assessments came in, and at the same time, different ways of approaching how to understand the shared water challenge that we all had at that specific watershed basin catchment, right? Which are the stakeholders that are working right there. So before taking action, the best thing that we needed to do is measure the problem, right? So to finish with that concept, so working watershed by watershed and source by source, like one of the biggest challenges that we found at Waterplan, and that's why we decided to invest on data, was what we call like the water data crisis, right? We saw that the problem was at like a global scale, but at a local complexity as well, right? And the data sources to understand each one of the risk drivers, either, as I mentioned, the physical ones or the regulatory ones or reputational ones or infrastructure and so on, where like the data was too siloed that companies or either other stakeholders were doing the assessments in different ways. So we were all trying to speak the same language, but we were not, and using different data sources. And also it became like quite complex to do it on an efficient and scalable way. So basically we decided to structure a granular and scalable process and leverage AI, that I believe like we can leverage the AI revolution. We have an amazing like company right there with us, like it's a huge part of it. And water has a central role in the AI revolution, and also AI has a central role in helping us like mitigate risk, right? So we leverage AI to do it faster, more accurate, have granular data, and understand better how we can bring all this amazing water expertise of the world to find those like specific data sources at each site and create the right models to understand which are the problems, prioritize the sites, prioritize those risk drivers, because out of those risk drivers, we will basically focus the collective efforts to mitigate and adapt to water risk, right? I can speak for hours. I told you this, Andre. So I will stop here just in
No,
case.
Nico, it's great, but I think that something that I would like to highlight from you is that, or that for us, like in Quilimo, is very helpful. It's helpful is that you give numbers that help us to convince the CFOs of the companies to also understand the level of risk that they are achieving, and I think that's very, very important, because if you don't give the correct numbers, if the companies don't see the risk, the economical risk, this is no social responsibility. This is not, I want to have a good relationship with the community. This is a problem of the business. And I would like to highlight that from Waterplan because it's very, very helpful. Thank you, Nico. And then I would like to go to the second part of this journey that we have, which is an organization that I am a personal fan, which is Bonneville Environmental Foundation. We have Rob here, and I am a fan of them because you have been working, Rob, in this for years, and the way that you are trying to have the model that you have to Latin America, for me, it's very inspiring. And like you are the ones that are helping the corporates to set the goals, but then also connecting them with the correct implementers, which I think that would be very, very hard because the goals are huge. And then how we drive that to the local side, it's a very, very big challenge. So if you can tell us, what strategies does BEF use to integrate the corporate water stewardship with the local community? And also because you have a global view, if you could help us to understand if you see some other different things that are happening in Latin America that could be things that we can take in advantage or maybe not, or our challenges. Tell us more about this, please.
Okay. Thanks. Big questions for sure. So I'll try to be concise. Also want to express my gratitude for the invitation to participate. This is my first real engagement in World Water Week, so I'm excited and a little bit nervous about that. But with all the familiar faces here, I feel some comfort and really appreciate the privilege
this panel is like home, right?
Yeah. I appreciate the privilege of working with all the folks here on this panel. So I'm learning a lot from them. So anyway, yeah, Bonneville Environmental Foundation, we're a nonprofit organization, so we're mission-based, and we have various program areas that focus on water, on climate, and on energy. And so there's often overlap and nexus between those things. But in terms of water, we have a program called Business for Water Stewardship, and we've been doing work helping corporations to find ways to invest in water stewardship in various geographies. And as you mentioned, the idea of a community-based or community-led or community collaborative in terms of what values water is delivering them. I'm helping to define those and then helping to understand what kinds of initiatives they're developing and engaging. And so looking for that overlap and looking for opportunity and for investment that's really meaningful to the local communities and to the values that they've defined for themselves. That comes a bit out of our DNA or sort of our origin story, where actually I spent most of my work. I keep saying I'm relatively new, but I've been working in our Business for Water Stewardship program now for about 3 years, though I've been at BEF for almost 16 years. And that has been in watershed restoration. So community-based watershed restoration that is led by a collaborative of stakeholders to identify what the issues are, identify the things that they care about, and then to make decisions about what to do in that regard. And so we really hold sort of dear to us, letting the local folks decide what's important to them, decide what they need to do about that. And so that knowledge then helps us to inform the corporates, helps us to more quickly understand what the issues are, regardless of where you are, in what country, what continent, but to help make those kinds of connections. So, personally, my heart is very close to the ground in this work. I work, again, a lot with the local entities, and I just appreciate the kind of connection they have with the water and the land and the things that, it delivers to their community. So anyway, that does inform the work. It informs how we go about our work. It informs the values and principles that we use when we try and do this. And so in most cases, the goals, water stewardship goals, are defined in a very simplistic way, sort of that volumetric benefit, water benefit accounting. And so making that relatively simplistic goal set become more meaningful. These are more outputs focused when we're really interested in the outcomes focused. And so to me, it feels like this practice is still very early in its evolution, that there's a lot of growth that can happen. And to me, that's one of those areas of growth, is moving beyond the outputs more towards the outcomes, which could require deeper engagement, longer term engagement. I know that's not possible for all companies to do that. I think there's room for the more transactional projects. Funding is always important and critical. And limiting. So there's just a lot of different ways to go about, I think, making sure that those water-related benefits and values are actually making a difference for the people that live in these different places.
Great, Rob.
Yeah.
What do you see in Latin America? So do you see any difference that we have, any advantage or challenge that we are going to address if we compare with some other continents?
Again, we're relatively new in Latin America. Most of the work that we've done around agriculture is with Quilimo, is with Agua Segura, is with groups that we know really well. So I feel like we're still very much in the learning stage. But one quick example, a pretty significant large project that I don't know if Catalina, you're going to talk about it or not, is an integrated approach to improving efficiencies that include various elements. And one of the big learnings was when I asked the question, what other funding is available to support this kind of work? Are there public programs to support this kind of work? And if I recall correctly, the answer was that there aren't. And so the one difference is that in most other geographies, a project like that would have multiple, maybe 5 different funders that would be contributing to that. In this case, the corporation, I think I can say is Google, is funding the entire project because there aren't any other co-funders and there aren't other programs. So that's a difference. It sounds like a negative difference, but it is a different way for some corporates sort of to look at this work, is that there needs to be.
And it's also an opportunity because
Yeah.
the ones that we are working already in that should push to collective action, which is also an objective that we have. But yes, I see like a talent, but also like an opportunity.
Absolutely. No, for sure. Yep. And it's, there are commonalities across different countries and different geographies, but there are differences as well. And I think there's always opportunity for learning across these different locations. And so where we do see collaboratives coming together, people working together, there's a potential for some maybe facilitating some visits or some sort of shared sort of cross country learning directly the people that are doing the work rather than us delivering the information from the Netherlands, for example, and how they do things in the Netherlands to Chile, for example, is to maybe have some opportunity for the farmers in the Netherlands to meet with the farmers in Chile and talk about how they do collaborative, those kinds of things.
Okay, thank you so much. That's an amazing experience. And you gave us also the words that we needed to go with Paulina from Microsoft, because you already said, and the funding is critical. Okay, so we need that stakeholder that put the money so we can implement and go for that water security that we need. And so, Paulina, I need to make the question that everyone asks me whenever I said that Quilimo is working with Microsoft. Why is Microsoft, a technology company, investing in water security through agriculture? And that's going to be my first question. And I am going to take my second one, the one that I have written, because Rob gave me an idea. Do you have any experience around the world competition?
You broke a little bit at the end, Andrea. Can you repeat your second question, please?
Yes, sorry. So do you have any experience around the world where you are co-funding a project with any other technology company which could be seen as a competitor?
Sure. All right. Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I will answer those questions. And I just have to say, echo what everyone has said. It just feels like a home to be in this panel because I'm fortunate enough that I get to work with a lot of you. And just going back to, the importance of BF, the role that BF plays. I met Agua Segura and Quilimo through BF. So just an example of those connections that happen through them. Okay, so about your question of why Microsoft and water, I get that question also from my nephews that they are like, why are you working on water? Like, what exactly do you do? And the answer is that as every other business in the planet, we depend on water. We are exposed to water risk. Like Nico just put it very clearly, like the water risks and the different issues are out there, and we are no exception. We really believe that managing water resources is critical, not only for our own operations, but also for the communities where we operate. And as a company that operates like virtually everywhere in the world, we really think that we have a responsibility to do something about it. And that's why we have a goal to become water positive by 2030. And for us, water positive not only means, reducing and replenishing, but also improving access to water and sanitation for people across the globe, driving innovation to scale water solutions. And we see that as an accelerator. And then also advocating for efficient and innovative water policy, that we see that as an enabler. So it's kind of the 5 pillars of our water positive goal. So specific on agriculture, well, we know that water issues are local, but however, the biggest user in most locations is agriculture. And there's inefficiencies that happen in agriculture. And this is not to say that, what farmers are doing is wrong. It's just a reality that agriculture uses a lot of water. So we have supported many projects that are related to agriculture efficiencies, and some of them, like through Quilimo, that we have 2 projects with you in the Maipo Basin and also in Mexico. And I just want to layer in one personal anecdote of why water and agriculture as well is a personal relevant thing for me. I think a big reason of why I started in the water world and devoted my career to this was because I am from a water scarce area in Mexico, from Celaya, Guanajuato, that is very water scarce and also agricultural dependent. So I grew up hearing farmers talking about it didn't rain this year, the the wells that they take their water from are like shallow wells. So like if they didn't rain, then they wouldn't have like irrigation for the dry season. So all these problems were like so much in my head. So I understand what the issues are. Yeah, we have also agricultural efficiency projects with BF, in many areas in the United States, with Agua Segura as well, in the Laja Basin and in Madrid. So it is something that we just see it as part of our portfolio of replenishment projects. And then for your second question about co-funding with other competitors, this is like a very collaborative space, and like you can see, talking the Google, Meta, AWS, we're all talking to each other, right? We all have the same issues. We're all passionate about solving the water issues, and we know that we have to work together. So there's many examples, even like the one with Quilimo. I think we started with Google and Microsoft supported that project. We have several others in which Meta is also involved, and like all the other tech companies. So no, the answer is that we don't see that when it comes to water, we are all using the resources. We all know that we have to work together. So that's not a barrier for us to collaborate when seemingly we are competitors. We want to work together on solving these challenges.
Great, Pau. And you see that as a company mindset, it's not just the water area leading that. Do you see that it already changed in the whole company, or you are still internally struggling with that?
Look, when you see like when we are sharing resources, right? This is shared resources. So it would be silly to think that, oh, we're doing this little bit and we are not talking to this other company, because you are not de-risking yourself, right? Like the risk is going to stay here. And actually, it's something that I heard this morning in one of the panels that was actually Tara from Google, that, we can be doing all these replenishment projects, and they have been going on for like years. But the reality is that maybe the basin, like the situation is still the same, or even has gotten worse. Like unless we really get together and we have that collective approach, things are not going to move forward. And I can say like there's of course other competitive elements, but in these cases, like I think also for carbon, like there is also that kind of like flow of information between companies. So yeah, I think we were trying to work with our peers as much as we can in the areas that we can.
Okay, thank you so much, Pau. So now that we have the funding, we need to go to the ground, right? We have already the contest, we have the goal, we have set the goals, and we now have to go to the ground. And in that sense, we have here Catalina from Agua Segura that is working on the ground, is working in agriculture projects. So Cata, thank you so much for being here with us. And what I would like to ask you is that those who work in agriculture, such as both of us, and water security, know that two of the biggest challenges are long-term projects. Sometimes when a corporate comes and say, okay, we need this from 2030, we are thinking on how we are going to convince the farmer to do something in the long term. It's very, very difficult. And also in every watershed, we have so many stakeholders that sometimes is very challenging to deal with. Can you tell us more about how do you address that in Agua Segura?
Great. Thank you, Andrea, and hello, everybody. It's been a pleasure to be here with these great colleagues to work with. So yes, the stakeholder engagement and the long-term water projects are one of the biggest challenges in water projects now, but it's also the key factor for the successful of the projects. With no key engagement of multi-stakeholders, no water project is going to have the impact that we want, that the company wants, that we want, and the community wants also. So to do so, we based our projects in two main strategies. The first one is the co-design. We need to co-design the projects with the community, with the local farmers, with the local NGOs and other organizations that are working in the basin to ensure the sustainability and the scalability of the project. So to do so, we try to map to who's working there, what are the water challenges, what's the community view of that water challenges and what are they doing, and try to co-design this project to be eligible for the company. So to answer also to the KPIs the company have, no, and to do the match in some way. And also to involve the public sector. So we need the local governments to be involved in some way in the project. So we assure the sustainability of the project, because water is public in most parts of the world, and the management, the water management is from the public sector also. So if they are not involved, we can miss something there too. And the other key factor or key strategy that we involve in our projects is the community engagement through education. So we try not only to do an activity or leave there a solution, but to also educate the community of what we have done, and to educate the next generations, kids, and moreover, so they can put the value on water, and especially so they can then manage the project when we are out, because these projects may sounds like they are long term, but 10 years not long term for a community that needs water to live. So leaving local knowledge in what we have done is also a key factor to ensure the sustainability and the multi-stakeholder engagement. No? And I'm glad that Robert mentioned that project, because it's one of our biggest projects, and in one of the most stressed basins in Latin America, that is the Maipo Basin in Chile. And it's a project that has 3 sub-projects in some way, and we can only make one and wait for the other ones to have more fundings. It was essential to have the commitment, in this case, of Google to do the 3-1, or to try to assemble the 3-1. The project was mainly to repair a water reservoir. Chile has a particularity that the water is private, and they had to have a reservoir to then distribute it to the agricultures in this case that own the water. That reservoir was operating at 30%, so there was a lot of water loss, and this also caused a lot of social problems. So water is also a key factor to maintain peace in the society, no? So making this reservoir work at 100%, I also making arrangements in the canals that distribute this water helps the producers to have more water to irrigate. But we also needed to work with the local farmers in how they can be more effective in using water, more efficient, and how to irrigate better. So in that way, we gave them water, we educate them in how to be more efficient, and we have more water also to go back to the river or to the basin that needs to. So it was like a really interesting and integrated project with multiple benefits. And we couldn't done that with the community if we didn't have the community approval, the local municipality engagement and commitment also, and also, of course, the private sector.
Great, Cata, thank you so much. And you bring into the table the role of the public sector, which is really, really challenging, which manages other times than the one that we need to deliver. So I'm really glad that you have there a very good experience with the public sector. Thank you so much to all the panelists for this beginning question. I need to say, someone is telling me here that to the audience, whatever you want to ask, we will have between 5 to 7 minutes for open questions. So please feel free to leave your questions in the chat, and I will read them to the panelists. And now I would like to convert this in a real panel so we can discuss, and this is going to be like more free, so you can open your microphone in case you have an answer. But something that I am obligated to do because I have one of the biggest technology companies here, and I have like one of the best technology entrepreneurs in the table. So guys, the AI role in this big data challenge that we have, especially if we are working with farmers. I know, Nico, but we are working with farmers, Cata, and I know that it's the data is the big challenge. And we have this big monster, which is the AI, and we need to connect the dots. How are we going to do that? Are you optimistic regarding that? Are you pessimistic regarding that? Do you have any comments around that?
This is just like we jump in, or it's like
Go.
this?
Yes, you can jump in. Exactly.
I can kick off. For me, it gives me so much like happiness, like because I saw how like we were doing things like 10 years ago, like either a risk assessment or understanding like a stakeholder map, like identifying who are the players at one region, what were they doing, which is the impact, right? And still we are, right? Still we are still doing like everything like manually, like unstructured, siloed and so on. And I believe as like we are, I don't know, writing emails faster or like summarizing like documents in a faster way, like technology can help us be more precise, efficient, get to better data, and on our processes and specifically the outputs that will then become outcomes and impact, right? And those processes could be either how I prioritize a site, how I prioritize like a site main risks, like which are the main stakeholders at that region, which are their activities, like how to create reports. So, and that's a huge one, right? Like today we are spending so much time on creating specific outputs, specific reports, and AI can help us focus more on taking action, right? Rather than spending like hundreds of hours building reports or gathering data. So like efficiency and better data are two big things that day over day we need to invest more. So I will stop there if it makes sense. I believe that would be the AI role.
Okay.
Well, if I may jump in quickly, Andrea, just yes, echoing Nico in the way of efficiencies. And I guess you've seen the pains. You're the ones who are really saying it on the ground, what it takes to have that data collection from the farmers and like how you can actually use other data platforms or so like a satellite imagery or some sort of online on-site monitoring to really complement this data and like keep improving the way the models are built, right? So we're just scratching the surface. I think there's so much to do. But I see how like there's so many other companies. Yes, you know Asquilimo, but there's so many other companies that are using taking advantage of this data availability to build AI models for different implementations related to agriculture. So I am very hopeful, and I've also seen like in other AI applications for water solutions or just leak detection, right? And we have a portfolio not only for water utilities to detect leaks very quickly and know exactly where they are, where before it could take them months or even never detect them. Now AI is enabling them to say like, there's a leak, here it is, and you can deploy the resources in much faster way. So I definitely think that technology has a big role to play. And I am very hopeful and like really looking forward to see what other ideas come forward for solving water challenges.
Okay, thanks.
Rob. Just jump in real quick, and this is something that you all know, but farmers are really independent, and that's something that's sort of global. And but they're also always watching what their neighbors are doing, and so good ideas are good ideas, and good ideas are contagious. And so in my work, having worked on farms as a youngster, worked in farmers in our watershed work, is once you get an early adopter, and maybe this is sort of obvious to you all. Regardless of what it is, even if it's sort of AI or technology, another farmer is watching what's going on. They see the benefit of that, and then it just sort of spreads. And so it's not always the specific thing, but it's sort of that's the psychology and the sociology of how farmers work, at least in my experience. And I've seen that to be pretty consistent regardless of where you are.
You're totally right, Robert. Exactly. The farmers are very into sharing experiences. Cata?
Yeah. Well, first of all, I think we all need to be optimistic because if not, we have to leave our jobs. It's going to be very difficult to work towards water projects with our optimistic. And second of all, I think also when farmers then see in a more tangible way how this is going to be beneficial for them in an economic way or in a more environmental way, later or soon they come on, they see technology useful. Of course, it's difficult, especially maybe in Latin America, where we have many other difficulties to address, but I think it's going to be a long journey, and we are right on it.
Great. And I would like to ask just a little bit of my experience that I think that AI should have or should help us to do, which is for me one of the hardest things, which is measuring the ground. If we can find a way to accelerate that, I think that we will really do the impact at the scalable way that we want or we need to. I am going to jump to the other questions, and then I'm seeing some other questions in the chat. Kata already put an example, but I would like to listen the others too regarding what do you think, or do you have any success story or experience regarding the collaboration between the public and the private sector? Why am I asking that? Farm or agriculture, it's something that, at least in Latin America, it's very linked to the political context of the country. If we don't have the public sector into the project, it's very, very hard to scale in the whole continent. So for us, the experience has been very challenging. We have some success story, but I would like to hear if you guys have some good stories to share. It could be in Latin America, or it could be outside Latin America, so we can take as an example. Rob, maybe in your experience.
Sure, but I will point out also to Rob and Catalina, because they are really the ones on the ground and doing these connections. Like, for example, with the project that Agua Segura is doing in the Laja Basin with farmers, that has to be in collaboration also. Like, part of it comes from a public initiative. And Cata, please feel free to talk more about it, where they see the problem, right? That's number one. Like, there's a water issue in Guanajuato in the Laja Basin, so there's some support from the government in this case for farmers to do some leveling of their terrain and start looking for more efficient irrigation practices very early on. But that's just one example. In Latin America, we have another one that is with Conservation International, actually in Xochimilco, that it is kind of a different way of agriculture, because it's in the old, like, Aztec way to grow food in the middle of a lake. And there's also, this collaboration between a university and different organizations that, it still is early on, but we hope it's going to be a very successful story. And with BF, there's so many stories, I think, that are happening in the Colorado River Basin primarily, that are bringing many stakeholders together, tribes, the local communities, local governments, in driving solutions to improve water efficiency in irrigation, but also to manage water as a whole for different users in the basin. So I think I would like Robert and Catalina to jump in and just, talk more, as they are the ones who are really involved in the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, thank you, Paulina. Yes, the project that we are carrying out in the Laja River is in collaboration in some way with the local government that assists these farmers, but it's never enough, that's why the private investment is also so important. And in this case, we are also collaborating, and I think they are here in the panel with NUC, who is our local organization, who is a third party, who is a NGO. So that's also a big part. It's not public, but we also need organization for the society to help us in addressing this kind of projects. So yes, that's something that we are working on, and it's been great up to now.
Thank you, Kata. Rob, do you know more about the experience in Colorado River? Because that seems is like a worldwide example of how to do collective action projects.
Yeah, and I have colleagues that have been doing a lot of work there for a long period of time. Todd Reeve, our CEO, and Scott McCullough both have been doing work in Colorado. It has not been my sort of focus area, but I can speak a little bit to that. I think one of the big projects, as an example, has been with the Colorado River Indian Tribes Reservation, where they did working with NDRIP, a private company that develops technology around drip irrigation and efficient irrigation. There's 4 different tribes that work together. They have about 44,000 hectares of agricultural land that they have entitled water to be able to irrigate that land. Water is scarce there, as I think everybody knows, and those kinds of reductions are only going to increase. So there's a lot of opportunity to increase efficiency in terms of how irrigation is done on those lands. Often flood irrigation, which I think you all know is probably the least efficient way of using water. And so there was a pilot study done that showed that there could be up to 35% water savings, which I think you all understand as well, if they were able to convert to drip. And working with a local water authority, which actually received some of the funding to first they pilot, then they actually implemented a project that was about $4 million to irrigate 575 hectares of land, or convert that to drip, and achieve a savings of about, let's see, 780,000 cubic meters per year. But just the idea that some of these vulnerable communities that may not have the same political or economic power, is that companies can step in, provide the funding to give them sort of a say, give them an opportunity to do things that they wouldn't have otherwise been able to do, but also to leverage sort of on the public side. The reality is they have a legal right to this water. The water is becoming more scarce. There's a lot of controversy and there's a lot of fighting over that water in the Colorado River Basin. And so there's an opportunity here for companies to support sort of an equity piece of that water use and economic development and sustainability for these different communities. But that, I think the Colorado River Basin is where BEF really started working in this realm. So I wish somebody like Todd was on this call. He would be able to speak maybe hours as well on that topic. But there's a lot of really
Let's
amazing.
go and find him in
Yeah.
Sweden. I'm sure that he is. So we can
really
so the audience can go and look for Todd.
Yep.
See that. Thank you, Rob. I just would like to tell just in a minute, because you are the ones that have the microphone, but we have also an interesting experience with in the Development Inter-American Bank in Mendoza, in Rio Mendoza, in Argentina. And what they are doing is to invest money for a couple years to promote these kind of practices with the government and with other companies from the private sector. And after 1 year of investment, we already achieved to put a company inside this collective action project. So we are very honored to be implementing that. And I think that's another strategy sometimes to put the public sector into the projects, like try to inspire the development banks of the regions that we have to put the money first. Guys, I have here some questions from the audience, and I'm going to read it so you can answer. But here they ask, what do you think is key to change water conservation behavior? What do you think that we can do to exactly make them do things in a different way? We have some examples with the farmers, but if we want to go to other experiences with other projects, you are very free to do that too.
Sorry if it's not my turn, I can let somebody else go. But just one thought, something that we learned and we're continuing to learn in our watershed work. And in most cases, farmers are one of the stakeholders. So they are a stakeholder that care about how water is used, but the water, there's sort of competition in terms of what values it supports: environmental values, social values, economic values, those kinds of things. And so where we have actually, there's monetary incentives. That's sort of a sort of one straightforward way of getting there to changing behaviors. But another way is to bring people together to understand what their shared values are, to the point where they are actually willing to not to necessarily make sacrifices, but to empathize and understand what are all the values that water delivers for a community, and how they not only think about themselves, but think about other members of their communities and other values of the community. So it takes a lot of time to get to that point, but somebody who convenes diverse stakeholders to talk about what those values are, to arrive at some mutual understanding and appreciation and respect, then people start to, it's easier to sort of change your behavior when you're engaging with people face to face, at sort of at a personal level. So that's maybe more of a touchy-feely way of doing it, but that's something that we've experienced in some of our watershed work.
Thank you, Rob. You mentioned a word that it's very important, which is patience, right? It's very, very hard because the situation is very urgent in many places, but at the end of the day, this is something that takes time. When you talk about water, when you talk about agriculture, you need people trusting on each other, and this, we like it or not, takes time. So thank you for that. Do any of you want to add something? Otherwise, I have a question here that I think that it's more for Nico, but let's see. Pau, Kata, would you like to add something to Rob's answer? Okay, so Nico, I think that this question is more for you because it asks, what recommendations could you offer to companies that wish to improve their resilience to water-related risks? And how do you convince internally to do so? Paulina, I'm sure that also would have some experience on that, but I would like to start with you.
Yes, Pau, do you want to start or like go? Okay, so I would step on the drivers that those are the main reasons why companies we are seeing that they are doing the risk assessments. Like now, clearly, like regulations are setting the let's say the incentive for companies to start like advancing on water stewardship, starting by measuring the risks, right? So CSRD, ESRS, of course, CDP, now all in one with water and climate and so on. SEC, including like physical aspects that includes water as well. Everything comes after like basically the disruption. So clearly what we are seeing is an increase in disruptions, like trends going like towards like higher risks. So basically regulators are stepping in. So like communicating that story internally and sharing the right information, like the data sets in a clear way to understand those basically risks will help prove the case to basically take the next step towards action, right? So I would say like step on top of the regulations, on the examples of the disruptions that already peers are like disclosing, right, in the same industry, the beverage industry, the mining industry, the data center industry there. And also the reason why they are setting these targets are because of, again, like the disruptions, the regulations, and so on to take action. So I would step on those first layers of the drivers that then take us to respond and take action. Does it make sense? I don't know, Pau, if you want to add. Usually I love to step on the drivers because that's the main reason, right? Why we are doing what we do.
Yeah, I think that was a really great answer, Nico. Yes, and it's just understanding, right? In each area where we operate, what are the concerns? What are the issues? And yes, it's linked to our operations, like I said at the beginning, right? It impacts directly, and it impacts the communities. And if the communities are not doing well, we will not be doing well either, right? So it's stepping in those risks, as Nico said, and really that internal education of what is our exposure and why we're doing this.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. And then with your experience, I think any of you could answer, but I think this question is very interesting because as I told you before, we need patience, but people need to see results in the short term. So what impacts are you beginning to notice in the projects that you are implementing, or the ones that you are close, or the one of your customers, in the relationship with the community whenever you are implementing a project in the watershed? Are you already seeing a difference, or is just the KPI that you put in the report and then that's it? How is it working in the ongoing projects?
Okay, maybe I can jump in here. So we from Agua Segura, we have several projects, not only in agriculture. Maybe agriculture is one that has you have to be more and more patient, and we are just starting the ones. But what is related to water access or water security, the impacts can be seen for sure instantly. For example, this is a project that we have done along with Microsoft in Chile, also with the public sector. The project came from Agua Potable Rural, which is drinking water for rural communities. Well, it is an organization that depends on the government and also in collaboration with the local municipality. They have a problem in the well. The well has a lot of nitrates and contaminations, and they need to do a new well in a more with more meters down to ensure the mix of the water and to have affordable and drinking water for the community. And that was done, I think it was a month, I can remember very well. And the results after a year and a half ago are still, they have every family that they were like 3,000 people have benefit from this. They have water in their homes that they can drink, and they had a lot of benefits, of course, in their day-to-day life because they were not any more afraid of drinking water that was not good for the health. And that also was proven by the local sanity government that do the right test to assure that the water is okay for drinking. And this is the one case, and of course in agriculture maybe it's more is lower, but the users or farmers can have an impact directly in their bills, especially in the electricity bills, because irrigating in a more efficient way makes them pump less water and they pay less. So that's a more tangible way of seeing an impact in some way, no?
Yes, and sometimes, and to see if maybe we can have other experience either. Sometimes the impact is it can be felt for the users, but how does it impact the relationship between the corporate with the community they are investing in? Do you see, Pau or Rob, some experiences in which this has changed, or they are yet being implemented and you would like to wait until that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think measuring impact is really tricky. And it does take time to actually see those outcomes. And it also requires that there's a longer term engagement. So asking more questions than what's the volumetric benefit that was delivered for that year. And I think it's an area for growth, and it does create, I don't know, I wouldn't call it a frustration, but it is difficult for me, just given my background in watershed restoration, how long it takes to start seeing those outcomes and then that long-term impact. But I think that as we move from more transactional nature in projects to more partnership development or relationship development, will we be able to really understand, and we start to identify what are some of the measures that we can look at to see whether those anticipated outcomes are actually being achieved. And so it takes time, but it was a big change for me moving from watershed restoration to this kind of work, just because the need is so great, the goals are so ambitious that sometimes the work seems very frenetic. You're jumping from project to project, and so one project gets left behind. And so I'm speaking negative, but I'm just saying this is an opportunity, and I think this is something to really think about and to explore, is how do we start to think about evaluating and observing what those impacts and what those outcomes actually are after a project investment is made, even if it's a multi-year, especially if it's a multi-year project, which most of them now are 10-year projects. There's an opportunity, I think, to be able to measure that, but we need to find ways to get that information through the course of a project.
Absolutely. And I would like just to share our experience with that relationship projects and the importance of the relationship. We have a project in Atacama, which is a desert, a desert, but yeah, a desert, pardon, sorry. Which I can't believe that there is agriculture in there, but there is. And there's also a very big mining company working there, and they have the mining station stopped for multiple weeks. And once the company started investing in the farmers, the relationship totally changed. In that case, it was very tangible because the type of implementation that we did, which was like our irrigation academy, was very like face to face between the company and the farmers. But again, this is not about just social responsibility. It's just how not having a good relationship with your community will stop your business for several weeks. And I just would like to share with you that experience. Here, Stephanie asked us, what are for you the biggest challenges to run a due diligence on your programs? And do you engage with other subject matter experts to reflect on potential negative spill? We would like to start. Regarding the due diligence, I think that Rob maybe, well, have some good experience because there's a lot of due diligence in every project.
Yeah, I think if I understand the question, is due diligence about sort of that measure, the volumetric water benefit measure.
I understood the same.
Okay. So one, and Paulina's got her hand up too, but real quickly, one way is that we engage third party, or companies will engage a third party entity, that has technical capacity. Limnotech, Blue Risk are two examples that come to mind, to review a project to estimate what that volume is going to be. So there's sort of an external third party look at that. And then we integrate annual tracking and reporting as the project is implemented, to ensure that the project was implemented as designed, and to ensure that anything that is being monitored continues to confirm that the volumes that were expected, volumes that were modeled, or volumes that were measured are actually real. And so those are two things that we integrate in our. I'll stop there and let Paulina go.
Right, Pau? Or maybe because I see Paulina now from her phone. I don't know if everything is working well, Pau. I can speak, she says. No worries, no worries.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can now.
Okay, sorry, I had to drop from my computer because it just told me like I was in an unsecure connection, so I'm calling from my phone now. So in terms of the due diligence of projects, we go through like a very detailed assessment when we're looking at projects. And I'm sorry, I lost some of the conversation when I was kicked out of the room. But I think Robert said some of the key elements. That first, we looked at they align with our principles. We developed some principles for investing in replenishment projects that align with like not only counting the drops, really taking into account the considerations of the local communities and that environmental justice component. Also, we look at innovation, and we look we go through a detailed process with the projects that we receive for due diligence that align also with our priority basins. That's a very important key component from our due diligence process. And we also go through that third party review and quantification of the volumetric benefits in our case.
Thank you, Paulina. And I already have Sophie telling me that we are just on time and we're in Sweden, so we need to be very strict with that. Thank you so much, the panelists. Again, it felt like home, and it's really great to speak with you, to know deeply what are you doing, how are you doing, which are your questions to the future, and also some of the answers for that. And I hope to the audience that this could help us, this could help you to understand better what we are doing to achieve water security in Latin America. And I hope that everyone here could have a great World Water Week. We really need all the work that we are doing together. So thank you so much again, and hope to see you soon, guys.